Greetings, I'm Zachary Hepner. I'm pleased to share the Dvar Torah with you for Parashat VaYeshev. Only the few specials have the special appellation. Moshe Rabeinu, Avraham Avinu, David HaMelech. The appellation Yosef Hazadiq, Joseph, the righteous, is peculiar just because he turned down Mrs. Potifar's advancements. Tanah has many heroes who acted valiantly, and Joseph's courageous act is just one on the list of heroic acts. The appellation Yosef Hazadq is indeed an old one. It is mentioned in Avot D'rabi Natan. Omrim ze Yosef Hazadq. And in the Talmud Bavli, in Yoma. Klum ata hieta mi Yosef, amru alav al Yosef Hazadq. And in Seder Olam Rabba, which is the oldest of the sources. Davar acher yahav chuchmata l'chuchmin ze Yosef Hazadq. The simplest reason why he is called that is because of the mistaken attribution to Joseph in Amos, chapter 2, verse 6, as referring to Yosef. Al shlosha pisei Yisrael va'arba lo shivenu al michram baset kesef tzaddik. Amos says that Israel has violated 3 sins, and for 4 God will not revoke it. They have sold a tzaddik for silver, and the downtrodden for a pair of sandals. Also, there is a midrash that says, Be'ezer davar machru et Yosef shne'emar ba'avur na'alayim. וכתיב על מכרם יוסף בקץ הצדיק ואביהם בעבור נעליים, לכן תח אותו רשע את הבית בנעלים כדי שיכירו באיזה דבר מכרו את יוסף שנאמר בעבור נעליים. If one accepts the midrashic interpretation, then the earliest source for Hatzadiq, for Joseph, would in fact be the verse in Amos. But if one does not accept the midrashic interpretation, then the earliest source would be the Talmud or Olam Rabba or Avot D'rabi Natan. But the question still begs, why was he so righteous? Just because he turned down Mrs. Potifar? Let's read the 2 verses in depth. Vayima'ain. But he refused. He said to his master's wife, "Look, with me here, my master gives me no thought to anything in this house, and all that he owns he has placed in my hands. He wields no authority in this house than I, and has withheld nothing from me except yourself. Since you are his wife, then how could I do this most wicked thing and sin before God?" When you ask someone on the street, what did Joseph reply? The usual answer is he said no, or he said no, it's a sin before God. Why such a long run-on sentence? Who cares that Joseph is Mr. Potifar's estate custodian? Many commentators give answers to each of these clauses of Joseph's retort, and that Joseph gave Mrs. Potifar a list of reasons why not. I feel that there is a different way to read the texts. Engaging in intercourse with a Gentile or a non-Semite can't be the sin, because chapter 38, right before chapter 39, is devoted to brother Judah's failures and redemption with his intercourse with the local inhabitant Tamar. Furthermore, Joseph eventually marries Asnat, the Egyptian daughter of Potifar. Chazal put forth that Joseph was a Noachad, a ben Noach, and Mrs. Potifar a married woman. That would make Joseph's sexual liaison into adultery. Ironic that the same opinion that the characters in Genesis, that they kept the 613 mitzvot, maintain that they kept them as voluntary commandments and were still held to the de minimis strictures of Bnei Noach, of Noachites. It seems that the violation of adultery with a Gentile after Matan Torah would have been a lighter violation, but in the narratives of pre-Matan Torah, Joseph was prohibited from Mrs. Potifar as a Noachite. Still, I feel that Joseph's long, rambling excuse is in fact what merits his appellation of Hatzadiq. Joseph was telling Mrs. Potifar that everything about his success is in his honesty. He was honest with his brothers, perhaps too brutally honest. He was given warden rights later in the narrative. He was honest both with the butler and the baker and Pharaoh when he told them that only God can help interpret dreams. His mark of success was not only his executive abilities, but the trust he had gained in other people. If he breaks this trust with Mr. Potifar, then his entire name brand becomes diluted. This is called gnevat da'at, misleading people, something that Jacob, Joseph's father, engaged in twice when he misled his father Isaac and when he misled his father-in-law Lavan. Vayignov Yaakov et lev Lavan ha'arami. Jacob misled Lavan ha'arami. He kept him in the dark. The source against misleading others is in the Talmud Chulin 94. Amar Shmuel, asur lignov da'at habriot afilu da'ato shel oved kochavim. It is prohibited to deceive people, even to deceive a Gentile. Parenthetically, it's noteworthy that Chulin 94 deals with misleading Gentiles by giving them the forbidden meat with the gid hanashed, the forbidden sinew nerve. And that is in the chapter that follows the mentioning of Jacob, who had misled Lavan. But back to Joseph. Let's now reread what Joseph says. He first tells Mrs. Potifar, no. And you should know that your husband has given me control over his estate. And how can I do such a wicked thing? And it is a sin before God. The last and, as in, and it is a sin, is not just another reason, but the clincher. He means, and therefore. In other words, I was entrusted, and breaking the trust is itself gnevat da'at. Breaching trust is a sin before God. Joseph, as a trustworthy custodian, certainly merits the appellation hatzadiq, because there is only one time that the root tzedek is coupled, and that is in reference to business ethics. Tzedek, tzedek tirdof. You, the judge, should zealously pursue tzedek. To conclude, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, Rov bagezel umiut ba'arayot hakol v'hakol b'lashon hara. Rav Yehuda says that Rav says the majority people succumb to robbery and a minority succumb to regard to sexual matters. Joseph did not become Yosef Hazadq capriciously. Rav Yehuda said that only a minority of people succumb to sexual matters, but the majority of people succumb to theft. It takes a lifetime to build a good name and a second to lose it. 3 cheers for Yosef, who earned the ever title Yosef Hazadiq. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom.